Welcome to everyone to Critic. We are at System Midnight Records and we are going to be looking at jazz. We are going to be getting into jazz. Let's do it. Okay, so the main styles of jazz. Jazz started about 100 years ago-ish. It was birthed out of blues and ragtime and traditional African music. Early on in the 1920s, it was characterized by New Orleans jazz and Dixieland. And then a decade on from that, you have swing and big band. Next up, we've got bebop. And that's known for its really kind of quick tempo and bass line. Cousin to that is hard bop, which is a little bit more vibesy, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more chilled. And post-bop is a melange of those two with other forms as well. So you might have a little bit of soul wiggling in there too. Cool jazz is noticeable for its really laid back feel and easy tempo, so you can already see the relationship between previous forms and how they've developed over time. Free/spiritual jazz is quite improv heavy, so it's difficult to kind of get into typically as a form of jazz. Fusion is typically a joining up of both jazz and rock. So you have the structure of jazz, you have that framework, and then you have whatever rock adds to it. But it's not just limited to that. You will have other genres like soul that kind of worm their way up and kind of complement the genre as a whole. And then you have world forms of jazz. So from South America, you have Latin and Afro-Cuban, and then you have Afro jazz coming in from the continent. And those forms of jazz kind of bring in different spices and different flavors. And then most recent to us is contemporary. And these days jazz is infused with things like Afrobeat and funk and neo-soul, hip-hop, and then you have modern electronic techniques as well. Okay guys, so we're going to move on to the common difficulties that people face when we start off listening to jazz. First thing, structure. When you're listening to jazz music, you'll notice that it doesn't really have the same kind of structure that your typical pop music song will have. There's no verse, chorus, verse. It won't work in exactly the same way. It takes a little bit of time to sort of decode and realize that things are in a different order, a little bit of a different kind of like setup to regular pop music. We've got the complexity of jazz. Jazz tends to have a different rhythm and time signature that you wouldn't find in the songs that you normally listen to. They're not quite as digestible, and jazz tracks are usually longer than your regular 3 or 4 minute pop tune. Following on from that is the lack of vocals. A lot of people cite that the lack of vocalization in jazz music makes it difficult for them to listen to. People aren't really used to listening to instrumental stuff. Moving on, tonality. A lot of jazz uses different scales and sounds that most music don't make use of, and it kind of makes it sound alien to our ears. It's a little bit weird. Finally, vibe. People tend to ask for something that they can dance to, something club friendly, and a lot of jazz isn't. But as we'll find later on, there are many more forms of jazz. There are many more forms of jazz that you can dance to just as easily as you would to a club classic. Okay, so we're moving on to some tips to help you getting into jazz. I want you to picture that you're at this family gathering. You're sitting around a big table with the adults now. They're all pouring each other glasses of wine. You're like, can I try that? And they're like, yeah, fine. They'll take out their phones, they'll try and video you. You take a sip and you're like, oh, what the fuck is that? Jazz is a little bit like that. It takes some time to get used to. Eventually, your musical palette will adjust and you'll start to understand the uniqueness and the eccentricities of jazz. The next step is people who find lack of vocals an issue. If it's a challenge for you to listen to things that are just purely instrumentals, there's jazz for you too. If you listen to artists like Frank Sinatra, if you listen to artists like Louis Armstrong, they'll have a type of jazz that is really easy for you to connect with in terms of story. But you could just listen to instrumentals if you focus on the details, because jazz is so complex. There's so much in there for you to kind of unravel. 9 times out of 10, the melodies are still there. They're just not in vocal form. Ultimately, the biggest challenge is the uniqueness and the tone and structure of jazz. Listening to related genres can really help you with that, because you can draw back to the source material and be like, wow, that's my jam. Okay, so following the tips that we gave you, here are some more accessible genres that are related to jazz or that were birthed from jazz that you can have a look at. First off, hip-hop. Hip-hop is a great genre for getting accustomed to jazz sounds, while still being sort of in the realm of familiarity. 90s in particular is particularly appropriate. Try listening to bands like A Tribe Called Quest and Pete Rock and Common. Next, neo-soul. Neo-soul is a sick starting point with artists like Hiatus Kaiyote and Erykah Badu and D'Angelo, who all draw heavily from jazz, as well as hip-hop and R&B. Funk, Afrobeat in particular. Fela Kuti is your obvious go-to. One of the biggest influences on the contemporary jazz scene in London. Blues. Blues is a sister genre to jazz. It uses different scales to pop music just in the same way that jazz will do. A little bit different to what you're used to. Psychedelic rock. This genre will really get you used to listening to extended solos, so try out artists like Hendrix and Carlos Santana. Prog rock. So this genre is quite linked to fusion jazz, and you have a myriad of artists to listen to here, like Pink Floyd, King Crimson, Noi. Indie. Under the kind of umbrella of indie, you've got slowcore, so bands like Codeine and Low. And electronic-wise, Bonobo is known for heavily sampling classic jazz in his albums, particularly Black Sands. So why is it worth it? We've talked a lot about the different ways that you can get into jazz and like related genres and ways that you can kind of worm your way in, but why is it really worth it? Well, I mean, jazz is unique. Many of the artists are regarded as some of the greatest artists of all time. They're so skilled that people will, cite them as legends. They go down in history. And also, jazz is like no other music out there. Its tone and its palette make it distinguishable from every other type of music. And it has this really kind of like chilled vibe that is easily recognizable. Okay guys, let's move into some starting points for you. First up, We Out Here, a compilation album that is a perfect intro to the London jazz scene. Secondly, The Epic, one of the definitive albums for contemporary jazz. Moving swiftly on, the Ezra Collective. This is for people who want something a little bit more upbeat and lively. Then, Badbadnotgood, one of the bands responsible for introducing jazz to a wider audience. Followed swiftly by Alfa. And now some classic starting points for you. Kind of Blue, one of Miles's calmer albums, also one of the best-selling jazz albums of all time. And secondly, Chet Baker, his vocal jazz album was really, really popular. And it's important to note that the popularity of these albums, of these jazz musicians, shows that they connect with both jazz and non-jazz fans alike. Really cool. Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, a classic traditional style vocal album for you. And finally, Bill Evans, A Waltz for Debbie, personal favorite of mine, a great and easy to listen to jazz record. We're also a music platform that put on nights around London, many of which feature young bands from the London jazz scene. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe. Let us know what getting into video you'd like to watch next. Let us know if you're having difficulty with jazz. Let us know if you have any tips for people who are still having difficulty with jazz, and give us your recommendations if you have any. See you next time. That's jazz for you. You've got to work for it. Cool.